Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. I'm so happy to be here today. Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night from wherever you're coming from. My name is Boss Huang. I'm coming from you from Taipei, Taiwan. I am a campus director at Minerva University, which is located in San Francisco, California. As we wait for everyone to pile in, I would like to invite all of you to turn on your cameras if you're able to. And I would also like to invite you to go to the chat box and share with us which country and campus you're coming from or which university, and share a little bit about your project as well if you're willing to, so everyone can get acquainted. Feel free to connect in the chat, leave some of your connections, LinkedIn, so everyone can get to know you as well. And today we have Dr. Adrienne Nenow joining us. We will do an official introduction of the speaker later on once everyone is in here. And while everyone is sending their introductions in the chat, I would also like to invite some fellows to raise your hand if you would like to share with us an introduction on stage. And we will pick a few fellows as time allows to kind of come up here and greet everyone. Just a very short introduction within 1 minute of maybe where you're from, which campus you belong to, and a little bit about your project that you are working on. Okay, I see a hand raised from Evans. If you would like to go ahead, feel free to unmute whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm Evans Kosid, also from Ghana. We are also working on from the University of Education, Winneba. Then we also my project is basically on the SDG 8, that is decent work and economic growth. I've started doing something on that already. I've had some program already on that. That was I think it was held in around June there. Yeah, around June. That was basically on entrepreneurship and technology. And I think I'm hoping to still do more of something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evans. That's very great. Nice to meet you. And feel free to raise your hand if you would like to introduce yourself as well. A little bit about my project, since I didn't talk about that. I'm currently doing something related to environmental sustainability, trying to create a decentralized platform for everyone to participate and be able to be motivated in the real world as well. I see some other hands joining us. Elizabeth, would you like to go ahead and share?
Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Muntali from Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. So our project is based on SDG 4. Yes, we are going around the campuses collecting empty bottles, of which we are going to go with them at our Unipod. It's a home of innovations. We are going to shred them and then we are going to sell them. Later on, after selling, we are going to provide lunch for the needy students at our campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the introduction. I also see Laurent.
Thank you. My name is Laurent Kabila from the University of Nairobi, Cohort B. I'm the campus director. So my project is Zero Poverty. I'm a Democratic Republic of Congo citizen. In my place, there is a lot of poverty. So I'm working on enlightening these people at Congo on the importance of awareness over the poverty, what they should do to really incorporate all this together so that by 2030, every person in my state or my country will be aware of how we can solve all these issues together. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, Laurent. Next, we have Elkana. Please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong.
Yes, please, is correct. Thank you very much. I am Elkana Jehuapia from Ghana, University of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. My project is based on the SDG 1. My project, in summary, my project is like improving the livelihoods of people through industrialization, then a holistic education, and then technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elkana. So due to time constraints, we will take one last introduction before we go into introducing the speaker. I will give the stage to Phoebe.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Okafor Phoebe from Nigeria, University of Benin. My project is actually focused on teenagers, especially teenagers in orphanages and also in public schools. And this is mainly focused on the inclusion of teenagers in leadership opportunities and also in governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all who volunteered to introduce yourselves. It's great to be in this global community, and it's very also great to see so many people in the meeting room today. So since we're tight on time, without further ado, I will give an introduction to the speaker. Today, we're very honored to have Dr. Adrienne Nenow. She's the Director of Development for Global Affairs and Human Rights at the University of Connecticut Foundation, and she has over 10 years of fundraising experience in higher education and nonprofits. She holds a PhD in educational leadership policy from the Texas Tech University, an MED in comparative and international education from Lely University, and a BA in English from Farley-Dixon University. During her time at Lely, she has served as the United Nations Youth Representative, which inspired her research for her graduate studies and career path in international philanthropy. Her research interests include examining resource sharing between government, industry, and academia partnerships for innovation, specifically through the Triple Helix model, international philanthropy, and comparative education policy work. Without further ado, the stage is yours, Dr. Nenow.
Thank you so much, Boss. And it is such a pleasure to meet everybody this morning. It's morning time. I'm based in Pennsylvania, United States. And I just want to thank you so much to the Millennium Campus Network and the United Nations Academic Impact for launching the Millennium Fellowship and the opportunity to be here today and meet all the Millennium Fellows. It's such an incredible and prestigious program, and the work you're doing is just inspiring. Your commitment to social impact and your desire to make positive change in our world together is amazing. So very happy to be here. I will start off by sharing just a little bit about my background and my career. So as was mentioned, I'm the Director of Development for Human Rights and Global Affairs at the University of Connecticut Foundation. I started my career in fundraising probably over 10 years ago at this point. And I started at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. So before that, I had done some internship work, just getting some experience in grant writing, working in healthcare and small nonprofits. And I was kind of inspired to go into fundraising because some of my family members had worked in that sector. And I grew up seeing the positive change that they made in the community. I had one family member who worked for a small nonprofit called Meals on Wheels, which mission was to enable elderly individuals to stay in their home as long as possible and deliver food, have a meal service program to ensure that they were comfortable and could stay in the comfort of their own home. Growing up with that, I wanted to try to find a career that also made an impact and find a way to look at all the resources in the world and bring people together and create inspiring partnerships to make a positive change. So I started at Lehigh University as a development associate, which was a great introductory job because as a development associate, you kind of do everything. You're doing research, you're doing impact reporting, you're working with donors for the first time, and you're learning from everyone else around you. So I think that was the most important thing is there's always something to learn from someone else in your career field. Everybody has something to share, and just kind of being a sponge in those first couple of years and learning different methods and ways to kind of approach your career was invaluable to me. That set me up for my next job at Lehigh, which was working in our alumni relations department. And that was regionally based. So we kind of had events around the US, but then also internationally to connect our alumni back to the campus through speakers, through events with each other, because as part of the university, one of the most valuable parts of that is your alumni network. So even in the program that you're in, your cohort, people you're with now, and then just the alumni network in general will be very valuable to you as you go out into the world. When I was at Lehigh and when I had that second position, I started my master's degree in comparative and international education because I knew in terms of fundraising, there's so many different areas you can go into, so many different sectors that you can make an impact in, healthcare, education, nonprofit, and I knew I wanted to do something globally focused. So as I studied comparative international education, there was a program at Lehigh called the United Nations Youth Representative Program. That is a partnership with the university, with the UN, and it enables the university to give badges to the UN for certain nonprofits to students. So there's two badges. It's through the DPI NGO office at the UN that are given to students, one to represent the undergraduate population, one to represent the graduate population. And then we had about 20 other badges for nonprofits all around the world. And the idea was a lot of those nonprofits in different countries did not have the resources to send a representative to the UN to be their voice on the floor and to advocate for their mission and the work that they were doing. So they partnered with the university to send a student representative to go speak at the UN on their behalf, which was an incredible experience, one for the student, because when they went to the UN with their badge, they were a Lehigh student, but their purpose there was to represent that NGO. So when they were on the floor, they were technically an employee or representative of that NGO at the time that they were at the UN. For the students that had the Lehigh badges, like myself and my undergraduate representative, we went and represented Lehigh as an NGO because Lehigh University actually had NGO status. So when we went, we were the voice for our student population, the work that our students were doing. We had, it happens that I started there right when the SDGs were announced. And it was incredible to kind of see the plan around these 17 SDGs and all the opportunity that just being from education that students had to make an impact and that youth had an opportunity to make an impact, that we had a voice on the stage and we could work together to come up with solutions to combat some of these problems. So I heard a lot of people talking about some of the SDGs that they were aligning their projects with, and that's kind of where my inspiration came from as well. I really aligned, given my background in education, with quality education. And then number 17, partnerships. A lot of my work from Lehigh on in my career, and then also my dissertation and my graduate studies, has been around partnerships, because a lot of the issues we face are not contained by our streets, our borders, our towns. They're something that affects all of us in different ways and in different capacities. But it really requires a holistic approach and sharing of resources and coming together if we're going to find some sustainable solutions to some of these issues. So I served a term for about 2.5 years at Lehigh, for as long as my graduate student status held. When I graduated, then your badge goes to the next graduate student that applies and is selected. And we had the opportunity to go to South Korea and present at a conference to talk about partnerships between academia and NGOs, and kind of highlighted this project, how it aligned with partnerships, SDG 17, and the impact that partnerships can have in terms of, one, sharing resources, but also sharing experiences and expertise and knowledge, and bringing people together to share different perspectives and viewpoints and ways that they may approach a different challenge. So after that, that experience probably changed my life, and I ended up becoming Director of International Development at Lehigh, and I focused a lot on connecting with our international alumni groups. So fundraising focused still, and I worked with talking to our groups around the world that may not have been connected back to the university. And I also fundraised for so it was like dual. So I did a regional one, and then I fundraised for our international initiatives. So any international initiatives we had, I fundraised for those, but then I also engaged our international alumni abroad. I did that for a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit. So that kind of upended some of the work that we were doing, but we had to think creatively about different solutions to work within the pandemic, as a lot of people did in different careers and different sectors around the world. And thankfully, technology really helped in terms of being able to still connect with people, to have conversations, to engage in different creative ways back. I always think in education and also in my career, that there's always a solution to something, even if it may seem daunting or you're facing a lot of barriers. I try to assess what resources you have available, where can you build in terms of capacity, or what do you need to solve that problem, and how you can make it sustainable. So even after the pandemic, things like technology and virtual calls continued in my work, not only at Lehigh, but at the University of Connecticut. It's something that we've used to engage people further than what we had done prior to that. So it was a solution that stayed and enhanced our work in fundraising, but also enhanced in connecting people back to the university. And that led now to my current job at the University of Connecticut. I recently transitioned there about now 2.5 years ago. And I chose the University of Connecticut Foundation because I saw they had what was called a Human Rights Institute. And as I look at other universities and the work that I'm interested in the place that I want to make an impact in, I had never seen such a large focus from a university working with human rights issues. And it has probably 60 appointed faculty in all different areas across the university. So you can major in human rights and sustainability, human rights and engineering, human rights and supply chain, because it's something that affects all different career paths. And in terms of when you think about a career in fundraising, or personally for me, I feel like you have to be passionate about the area that you're asking people to donate to, because if you wouldn't donate it or support it yourself, it's hard to convey that passion to somebody else and make the case for why they should support it too. So that's kind of where my journey has led me and where I am now. And it's gone fast, but I've learned a lot.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Nenow, for that great sharing. Now we are going to go into the Q&A session. I would like to invite all the fellows online to put your questions either in the chat or raise your hand if you would like to ask it on stage. I'm going to start off with the first question here, which says, academia has often been described as isolating, governments are described as unapproachable, and industries are profit-driven. But today, as we are continually striving for the SDGs goals, we need to adopt a collective action and collaboration of all shareholders. Do you have any advice for us in regards to approaching these niche spaces of collaboration?
So that's a great question. I'd say probably a key word in all that is the intersection, right? So in each of those three different areas, when you look at industry, they're, to your point, profit driven. They have a business strategy that they're trying to achieve. Academia is really great in generating knowledge and coming up with different ways to make an impact in the world in terms of students, our faculty research, programs that we provide, and government is, policy. So a lot of stuff driven by policy. In bringing those three stakeholders together, there's somewhere in there that there's always an intersection that can be relatable. So when you think of asking for money from a corporation, we look at their CSR policies. So even though that's part of their business strategy, it's a way that they've committed to giving back to the community and giving back and making a positive change in terms of the environment, where they're working, in the sector that they're representing. And if there's a project or something that aligns with that mission, it's typically a good entryway in terms of discussion to make a relatable connection in terms of sharing resources. And I say resources because I mean things like funding obviously is a big priority when you're asking for money, or philanthropy or philanthropic commitment. But there's also other resources such as human capital, or we make partnerships with industries and we send student interns there. So it's an opportunity for an internship and experiential learning and getting that piece of their education, which it can also be valuable. Or we have guest speakers come and they share their knowledge and expertise at the university. So there's a lot of different ways in terms of in defining resources that can be shared within the intersection of those three stakeholders. And the theory, I think you had mentioned it earlier, I studied for school, was the triple helix theory. And it is a theory and a model that talks about how when you're approaching any issue or challenge, kind of the best formula or best intersection for innovative solutions is the intersection between government, industry, and academia. And the idea is that each one has a strength that the other one needs to be successful. And now there's even a new, that model is changing to incorporate a fourth helix called the civil society, because that's also needed as well. So you think of the other one needs what the other one has to succeed, and bringing those three together is the perfect formula for an innovative solution.
Thank you for the response. Yeah, that's a very great strategy to look for that intersection and how we can be mutually beneficial for win-win situations around the world. But I do think that leading into the second question, this does require a lot of connections and that reference network to know who to ask and ask what. So The next question I have here is not all students have access to opportunities through their campus. For example, the very valuable different experiences that you mentioned during your time at Lehigh to participate globally or even to represent organizations around the world. So what advice would you give students who aspire to make a change on a global level to kind of expand on or look for or develop their own connections?
A lot of times we see students who maybe have an interest in a program or an area that, one, to your point, the university does not provide, or we don't have a program that specifically matches their interests in terms of where they want to learn and grow, or the idea that they have for a career after graduation. So we typically like to look at the network as a whole, so your alumni network as a whole, or in an industry that you may be interested in, and reach out and make those connections in the form of informational interviews. So your network is very invaluable, and a lot of times your university will say, like, the alumni network itself can be very valuable and open doors for you, or programs that you're part of, that cohort and alumni network is also very valuable. So leveraging your network and your connections in terms of learning from each other, but also reaching out just to have a conversation or learn where maybe they have connections that they can introduce you to, and just continuing to be curious and learning from others will open doors. We had a project that we worked on preparing for Cambodia with a network of schools in Cambodia that were looking to implement an alumni program for this very reason. Not eventually for some philanthropic support, but mainly focused on helping students in terms of getting ready for tests, things that they could do after graduation, sectors and careers that they could explore within their town or their neighborhood, and being able to have that support after they leave school within the network of people who have already gone through that experience. So I think there's always an opportunity to connect with others and learn and expand your network and grow.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. And I'm sure many of the fellows here can attest to that power of connecting through individual connections. And I do want to, again, invite everyone, if you want to connect, the Millennium Fellowship, the Millennium Campus Network is a great source for these connections. So feel free to drop your LinkedIn in the chat and introduce yourself a little bit if you want to start building those connections. And also feel free to drop some questions that you have for Dr. Nenow in the chat. I see here on stage that we have someone with a question. Abu Bakri, is that if you're ready, please turn on your microphone and do make sure to introduce yourself a little bit before you ask your question. Abu Bakri, are you okay? There we go.
All right, thank you so much. I want to appreciate great speaker for today. I am Abubakar Mustafa from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. So my question is based on the project I'm looking forward to organize. So it is focusing on educating the young folks and reducing the rate of teenage pregnancy, precisely among the secondary school children. So I want to ask, because this project I am also collaborating with other fellows on my campus. So how can, irrespective of all the challenges, sourcing for all the materials, and even if survey is also included. So I want to ask, what are the steps I can take? I mean, how can I stay motivated till the end of this project? Thank you so much.
Microphone cut out just a little. So can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat it for you, Abu Bakri. Please let me know if there's anything you want to correct. I think essentially is how do we stay motivated within the projects that we're working on until the end?
Good question. I experienced this a lot in my dissertation because that was like a 4-year-long project that I had to stay motivated in, right? And it's something that you start because you're passionate about it and you believe in it. And a mentor had given me a really great piece of advice back then, and it was like, don't forget why you started in the first place. So if you can go back, sometimes it can seem daunting, you're coming up against barriers and challenges and you may get demotivated, But when you go back to that seed of passion in yourself as to why you started in the first place and what change you wanted to make, maybe it's evolved, maybe it's changed, that can inspire you or give you that motivation you need to keep going. And also just to think about different creative ways that you might be able to relook at or change your perspective in terms of some of the challenges or barriers you might be coming up against. It's also okay to sometimes take a break and just reassess, because your energy mentally and spiritually is also important as well.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I see a question from Zohaib in the chat. I like it very much. Zohaib, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? If not, I will go ahead and ask it for you. Okay. The question from Zohaib goes, how and where can we find donors for donating to our project and convince them for the purpose?
So in terms of finding donors, it can be sometimes, I think, overwhelming because there are so many platforms to be able to look at. And a lot of times there's ones for foundations, there's one for corporations, there's one for individual funders. So I think some resources, I'm also happy to share them via email too. So there's like the Foundation Center, which looks at foundations that may be looking to align with different missions or programs. You can use keywords to search for them. For our corporations, we've actually looked at things like the UN Global Compact has a really great resource in terms of looking at companies that are having a good CSR policies, commitment to different areas where your project might align. I often think an important piece of advice whenever you're approaching donors or you're submitting a proposal or an application is that there are hundreds of people also submitting different proposals and applications and reaching out to different foundations and corporations and even individuals, because there's a lot of people around the world and nonprofits that are doing different types of work. So when you're crafting your proposal and you're reaching out and you're making that connection, it's so important to think of the why and highlight your need and why your project specifically qualifies for aligning with their mission or qualifies for this funding, and what would happen if they didn't fund this project. Like, what is the critical need, that sense of urgency that you can put in your proposal as to why you think you're aligning this project with the mission of that foundation or corporation is really important. And a lot of them really look for that specific alignment. So they could have 4 different key areas, and I think it's really important to kind of tailor your proposal to pull in some of their keywords that they're using. If they have a board of directors published somewhere or some contacts that are part of the corporation and foundation, if you see somebody maybe on LinkedIn that has a connection with that person, or if you can reach out and make a connection with them directly. Sometimes it's great to know somebody who's in the foundation or corporation, because having that, again, a network or connection in there can sometimes open some doors for your funding proposal, or they can give you some feedback that might be helpful too. Not all of them have that. That's sometimes can be very difficult or rare. They don't allow unsolicited outreach, but you just have to look through their website because they're all different, and just read carefully and pay special attention to that.
Thank you. That's great advice. I'm going to ask one more question from the chat, and then next we'll take the question from Kuchemba. So if you can get ready to ask your question. My next question from the chat is from Michael. His question is kind of related to the last one, and also about how do we get organizations to support our passions. And I think the difference from the last question is taking this one step further, and it's also related to what you mentioned during the pandemic. How do we get potentially global organizations that are not within our vicinity? Maybe we can't reach them in person. Maybe it's entirely strictly through online platforms. How do we then reiterate our strategy for that?
So another thing that I think is really helpful is, I mentioned earlier, think of all the organizations out there doing different work, and then think of always go back to SDG 17 of partnerships and maximizing your resources. So if there are organizations or other even just small nonprofits that are doing similar work that you're doing, I think it's always great to reach out and see if there are ways you can collaborate, because one, you're sharing your own resources with each other, but you're maximizing your potential for somebody else to be interested in your work. Your outreach is growing. You're increasing probably your global reach in general, but also funders like to look at the larger impact that they're making. So if you're collaborating with maybe one or two organizations that are doing very similar work to what you're doing, and you all submit a proposal together, that funder will probably look at, oh, I can make this impact with 3 different organizations that are affecting a larger population of people versus this proposal that was sent to me that's maybe only a small group of people. And because there's limited resources in a corporation or foundation, and they have a certain amount allocated, they like to make the largest impact with the donation that they're giving. So sometimes having that collaboration and sharing your resources amongst each other, and maybe going after some funding together, might have a larger impact than maybe just working in silos.
Those are some great points, using the power of other people and partnerships as well. All right, for the next question, I would like to invite Kuchemba. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Kuchemba Abdulbatao. I'm from Ghana, the University of Education, Winneba. I'd like to ask this question. Mostly it is considered that leaders are supposed to make hard decisions, and in carrying out my project, I got to a point and I realized that I was trying to work on climate change, and mostly I wanted to educate the people on some of the things that we should do to sustain the environment. And then you get to that level of, or get to that society, and you realize that there are more pressing issues as compared to the issue you are trying to solve over there. So as a leader, I would like to know, what will she advise me to go on and carry on with the project that I went there, or how do I balance it by tackling the most pressing issue that I've identified over there? Thank you.
So in terms of working with pressing issues and making getting other people aware, I think if you identify an issue first that you think is pressing, and there's a need in the world, that is first and foremost, that's important, because you've already recognized a need that's happening that you want to address, and kind of put your energy into that. And if you're seeing other information about it, that means others have noticed it too. I will say, in terms of making other people aware about it, that's such an important question, and it is a challenge, because as a fundraiser, I have a certain portfolio of initiatives and issues that I have to make other people aware of too. And while our funders, I often think about this, or donors or potential prospects or people that we're reaching out to, are always front of mind for us. They're the people I contact every morning. I wake up, I try to get them engaged or interested in the work that we're doing. We're not always probably first of mind for them, just because there's so much going on in everyone's life. I mean, if you look at your own life, we have so many things happening in our inbox, or our family, or our jobs. So it's always trying to find ways to stay front of mind to the people that you're trying to outreach to, and select a key group of people. So you can't have so much energy to reach out to every single person, but if there are some really key partners that you're trying to get in front of or to contact, keep them front of mind for you, but just know that you will always have to try and stay in front of them, just because there's so many distractions anymore in the world, that it is a commitment to try and stay in front of potential partners, donors, or people that you're just trying to make aware, or groups or audiences that you're trying to make aware of what you're doing.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, that was a very good question. I'm sure as Millennium Fellows, we've all had the experience of having that hard decision of, do I want to continue or do I want to change paths? So again, I think the community of campus directors and Millennium Fellows around the world is a very good community to talk to also during these times of challenging questions. I did see a hand up from Kaja Hassan, but I think you lowered your hand. If you would like to ask the question, please let me know. And in the meantime, I will continue on with the next question, which is fundraising is quite difficult or scary for someone that is all both connected to a university as a university student and someone that is also connected to grant making organizations. What do you think we should keep in mind when looking for grants and donations? How do we balance these mix of different characters, both students, someone looking for donations, and also a change maker?
So I'll say fundraising sorry. Okay. Fundraising can be scary for sure. So I think that's an important point. It can be scary to put yourself out there and ask somebody or a foundation or a big corporation for money, and that fear of maybe it not working out or them saying no, or what will their response be, can be intimidating. And some of the best, I think, advice I've gotten and what I've learned, and that kind of gave me a little strength in terms of combating that is, you'll never know unless you ask. And the worst anybody could ever say is no. And that's okay, because then that wasn't a good fit and you just move on to the next person or the next opportunity. But it's the worst thing that could ever happen. The other side, I think the potential far outweighs the scary part, is the impact it could have. So one of the most, I think, rewarding things about fundraising is having that conversation with a donor, getting them inspired about the program, and then seeing that impact after they make the gift. So what their transformational gift did to move something forward, to make an impact on a student, to make an impact on a program or faculty research, or something maybe we have happening in another country, is such, and the inspiring and rewarding part of that. And it makes some of the scary parts worth it, because it does come together in the end. And sometimes it takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight. I have had some conversations that take a year for larger gifts to come in, but that impact is lasting after they make that gift. I'll also say, just in general, philanthropy is, I think, such a personal or deeply personal decision for somebody. So to cultivate that relationship, it's more than, I think, just having the conversation of, will you make a gift? It's, what are you interested in? What's your passion? Why is this important to you? This is why it's important to our organization. Is there a match in terms of your interests and your passions to what our organization is trying to do? And then once you make that match, I mean, it's so inspiring to see how interested they get in the program and wanting to make a gift to support it. Is, you know, the impact reporting is my favorite part, because we get to tell a story. And that's really where the art of storytelling comes into fundraising, is what you can do afterwards to show how a gift transformed somebody's life or a project.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question on the stage from Khan. Khan, would you like to go ahead?
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Kona Gokwal. I'm a fourth year medical student in Suez University. Actually, I'm working on a project which is related to health, and that is your health, your wealth. So I'm having question on issue of finance. Like for us, we want to conduct mental awareness on depression and stresses among university students. So, and assuming like we have inadequate finance, how can we hire maybe a place where we can conduct such awareness? Thank you.
I'll say that's a good question, because it sounds like you might be looking for connections or other areas where you might be able to collaborate. So if that resource doesn't exist currently at your campus, you might want to look at maybe just general searches or research of other places that may have that existing already at their campus, either students that are working on that or faculty that might be doing research in that area, because that is such a, I think, prevalent issue, and we've seen it on our campus. Mental health in students is especially after, I mean, before the pandemic, but now especially after the pandemic, we've seen an increase in that, and there's a lot of people that are now looking into that. So I know there's a lot of resources in terms of maybe areas that you might be able to partner with, or people that could share their research and findings with you if they've already done some work in that area in the past couple of years. But it might be something as looking at other campuses on Google, or I've actually found LinkedIn is a great resource. I look at LinkedIn in terms of what people are posting, because I like to share what they're working on and share the career industries that they're in, or things that they are looking for in terms of making other connections. So that's been an invaluable resource in the global aspect, making connections in different areas globally or internationally. But if I said our campus has it, so if I look and I see there's some resources at UConn, I'm happy to share them with you too.
Awesome, thank you. And just to segue on that point, I think everyone's probably very excited to see how they can follow along with what you're working on, Dr. Nenow. So if you could maybe at the end of the session share maybe your LinkedIn or some platform that the fellows can follow you on, that would be great. At the same time, I would like to also again remind everyone to feel free to put your questions in the chat or raise your hands if you have any. Next, I would like to invite Kaja onto the stage whenever you're ready.
Am I audible? Okay, thank you. It's Khadija, by the way. My question isn't pertaining to fundraising particularly, it's more of an abstract question, and that would be, my project is pertaining to SDG 3 and 4, which 4 is quality education and 3 is emotional mental well-being, something along those lines. Now it's easy to pitch events and collaborations in places that are already very accepting of these ideas. So for example, my school has a psychology society. My major is applied psychology. And so they're obviously very welcoming of any events that I pitch, etc. Any collaborations that I propose. Any other mental health organizations are also very willing to
I think we lost you, Khadija. Are you still on? Oh, okay. All right. We have lost Khadija. If you are still online, please feel free to type the rest of your question into the chat. But for now, we will move on to the next question that I received in the chat box as well. Someone is asking whether or not, Dr. Nenow, you have any feedback on developing a project proposal, and the extension to this question is whether or not there is any programs online that they could look at to enhance their project proposal skills, or even if you accept connections to seek mentorship in project proposal structuring.
It's a great question, because proposals can be a lot of work and daunting, and they're all different depending where you're submitting it. So I think something I have found a tool or a way of thinking about it that I think has really helped me, and it's something some of the professors that I've worked with previously, something that they have used and we found it very helpful, is kind of this idea of infrastructure capacity and sustainability. So when you're crafting your proposal, especially if it's for funding, it's really good to identify first the infrastructure piece, what is existing, what is the foundation of what you're building your project on. It could be you have a couple resources available. It could be you're starting something brand new, but it's good to establish that baseline on where you're starting from. I think that next piece is capacity. So where do you need to build to be successful? Are you hiring more people? Do you need more technology, equipment, things to make your project run? Like what is needed to kind of grow or scale your project, which is typically where your funding piece is coming in. Why are you asking for funding? What do you need it for? And how is that going to help make an impact on your project? And then the third piece is sustainability. So a lot of funders are also looking for the sustainability piece. So if they are funding something, they want to know, is your project going to be sustainable year to year? Is this going to be something you're coming back to ask for repeat funding? Is there something that you can inspire resources from other individuals to come in, but how can your project be sustainable moving forward in the world in time, not just a year or a month? Having a solid plan to move it forward is really helpful. So I think those three areas have been really helpful in breaking down a proposal in your project. And in terms of resources, I'm happy to share or look at proposals. I also have some like templates that might be helpful. So if that's helpful, I can also email them to maybe MCM would be the best place to share them, and they can share them out. But I know some tools and templates to get started are always helpful to give you some guidelines on what to do going forward. And then you can tweak it as needed, determining what funder you're sending that to, because everyone might have a different format as well.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Chimba, I see your hand up. Would you like to ask your follow-up question? Hi, I believe we have.
Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask this. It might sound a bit personal though, but I just wanted to know what inspired and motivated you throughout your remarkable journey to achieving this greatness, and what lessons can we learn from your experiences? Your impact has been profound, and I believe that learning from exceptional individuals like yourself is crucial for personal growth and development.
Well, that's a great question. In terms of what inspired me to kind of go into this work, I think I always, starting in college and then before that, just wanted to do something that made a change. Like, I don't know, if you think of yourself, this may seem very just basic, but as an individual, what can you contribute to your community or to your town? That's kind of where it started for me. Like, where can I start in my town to make a difference in other people's lives? And just what resources do I have available to give to somebody else that may make their life a little better? And then through that, I discovered I didn't know about nonprofits or fundraising when I went to school. It is something I stumbled across. And I think if you look at fundraisers' background, I've met people with degrees from all over the place. They come from sales and marketing, but they come from political science, or some of them were in science or mathematics, but they are all driven by this desire to make positive change. And I think that's, if you think of the industry in general and fundraising, there's some corporations that may take a more of a sales approach, and it's typically not that successful because fundraising is a relationship-based, passion-driven profession. And it's an area or a career where you're dedicating your time to making relationships that are meaningful and impactful, and bringing people in to the projects that you're fundraising for, and inspiring them to make a change and to care about that work as well. So I think, just kind of starting with that desire, going into this career, I've learned so much over the past 10 years, and I continue to learn more and be inspired and know that I couldn't even believe this career path was out there. Like, that there's something that you could do to continue to build relationships, bring people together. I talk about resources a lot. That's because I'm just fascinated that there are so many available resources in the world. It may not feel like it, but the challenge is bringing those people together, bringing those corporations together, finding access to it. And the challenge, and with my academics, we're focused on is how to find the solutions to open those channels up for resources, so we can achieve sustainable development goals.
That's awesome. So we got a similar question from Zaytuni in the chat box. I want to paraphrase that a little bit. And since you mentioned that fundraising is very relationship and connection-based work, so how do we continue maintaining connections with an organization, or continue that relationship with an organization once we have pitched the initial project? Because I think the challenge many people face during building relationships is, how do we balance kind of the professionalism versus the casual aspect of these connections?
Great question. So I think a lot of the fundraising part is exactly that, is staying in front of the organization. We call that, the technical term is touch points. So when you're building relationships, first, there's many different stages to fundraising. So your first stage, and basically in the career, is qualification. So when you find a donor that you think may align with your project or what you're working on, you qualify them in terms of, oh, this person, individual, corporation, foundation may be a good fit. I'm going to reach out and have a conversation or submit a proposal to see if they would be interested. If they're interested and there could be a pathway forward, they kind of move on to this next stage, which is cultivation or engagement. And that's where a lot of your touch points come into effect. And that's kind of what I mentioned before, is that they're always going to be top of mind for you, but you have to stay in front of them. So getting them excited and interested and sending them updates of the work you're doing is crucial. So in higher ed, a lot of the stuff that we do is sharing articles that may come out about a certain program. So if we have a study abroad program, we're sharing the impact of that. We're tailoring reports to send out to them, and they're not big reports. They're one page, this is how many students went abroad over the summer. This is over 50% of them were funded. So we share those. A lot of data and statistics are helpful. So 50% of them benefited from some sort of financial assistance. Otherwise, if we did not have that financial assistance, they would not have been able to go abroad. They would not have been able to have that global experience, which means impact on their education. And that's a lot of the stuff that we put in the report, is kind of the progress of the program, the impact that philanthropy had on it, how it's progressing, how it's growing, and that there's still a need. So there's still a need for, 50% of those students had financial assistance, but the other 50% may need it too. Or what are the other students that are applying that maybe couldn't get a scholarship and couldn't go abroad? We still need philanthropy or funding for that. So making that case for support or their need and highlighting that, as well as giving an update, I think is crucial in terms of keeping your project front of mind for potential funders. And then afterwards, once somebody does fund your project, it's the stewardship phase, I think is one of my favorite phases, but it's also one of the most important, because you don't just want to get a gift and then not share the impact and continue to keep that funder updated. So there are some foundations and corporations who do require progress reports. So they will require you to send quarterly or monthly reports to tell them how their gift is being used, how your program is progressing. But then also it's just really nice to send a thank you note, to share the nice story of what it did, what the impact that was made, because it's the reason why they gave the gift in the first place, because they wanted to make a positive change. And you putting yourself in their shoes, if you were to give a gift, you would want to know too how that made a difference in someone's life. So it's always kind of putting changing perspectives and wanting to stay front of mind. And especially with donors, I've learned you can never say thank you enough or be too front of mind once you get a gift and you're reporting on it, because it could also transform into repeat funding or a different gift, or getting them more engaged beyond philanthropy. We have a lot of individuals that get engaged beyond a gift. They come in, they are guest speakers, they open up doors at some large corporations for students to go and have internships there. They come and they bring their company to do some things on campus. So there could be a variety of different ways that you could engage someone. That could come from just keeping in communication and sharing updates about your program.
Those are some great points. All right. We got Khadijah's question through the chat here. So she asked, how can we propose mental and emotional well-being projects in workplaces that don't yet deem these concepts as imperative or aligning with company goals? And especially when paradoxically, these are the organizations that need awareness the most.
That's a big barrier and a big challenge, I think, to navigate for sure, because you're trying to propose a very important issue to corporations who are not aware of it. And that, frankly, I think when you were speaking, you said one of your SDGs was SDG 4, quality education. So it's that education piece. It's creating awareness, and how do you educate another corporation or entity or a group of people or an audience about the importance of the issue that you're working on. And that is a challenge. And I think I have face donors and tried to get them inspired and passionate about the work that we're doing, that maybe didn't see it or didn't realize it. And sometimes it's just a lack of not understanding it too. And there are a couple that I was unsuccessful with. So you're never going to be successful with any of them, but it doesn't mean you won't be successful with all of them. So there are a lot that we have achieved, and it just came from persistence. I was constantly in front of them. I was trying to highlight the need. Maybe there was a way I wasn't seeing it in terms that they understood, and I had to change my approach or my narration or my story or share a different example. If the couple stories I was sharing were not resonating, I had to go back and assess a different way in terms to share the message. Because a lot of the times when you're fundraising or when you're trying to get people to buy into what you're doing and to see the importance of it, of this particular issue, it's about telling a story. And some stories resonate with people and some stories don't resonate with people. And it's about changing the way that you're presenting the information. So I think that would be the best way to navigate something like that. It's just in terms of how you're communicating and how you're sharing the information of the story to get them to buy in. But I can understand it's frustrating and it's challenging, and there's a sense of urgency to make them understand what you're working on.
Lovely advice. I appreciate that. As we're running a little bit short on time for our webinar today, I would like to close out with one last question, a bit lightheartedly. This question is, if you could start again as a young social impact leader, what would you do differently, if anything? And the other part is, if you could go back in time and talk to the freshman you, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Man, I think if I had to go back, because sometimes I look back on my career and things like, you always think back, what could you do differently, or what would you have done differently if you had a different choice? And I think maybe just reaching out more to people in my field. I think when I first started this career, I was learning so quickly from the people around me, which was good. But I didn't start to understand the networking piece till a couple years later in my career. And then once I did open that up and I talked to people who were researching the same things that I did, or using different platforms to connect with people, and just sitting down for coffee and asking somebody about their career path, I was like, wow, this is powerful, and it's opening doors, and it's making me learn things that I didn't realize previously. And when I think back, I'm like, man, how much more could I have learned if I had started that just a little bit earlier? But we don't know, because it's in retrospect, and but it's something we learn about moving forward. So I often think back, okay, maybe I should have done this before, but it's not too late to do it now. I can do it tomorrow. I can do it, next week. It's, every day is another, I know it's a cliche, but every day is truly another opportunity to connect with someone or to do something that you wish you would have done previously.
Wow, yeah, that's very good advice for everyone here, I believe, in our journey of life. So thank you so much for today, Dr. Nenow, and thank you all so much for joining us today. As we're closing in on our end time for our webinar, I would like to thank you all again for coming today. Please do continue to follow the MCN with the links provided in the chat. Connect with me if you like. I've left it in the chat, and we've also linked Dr. Nenow's LinkedIn in the chat as well if you would like to connect and follow Dr. Nenow. Thank you guys all for coming so much today, and we look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day, evening, or night from wherever you are.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was so great to meet you and to be here, and I can't wait to see the change you make in the world. It's amazing. So thank you so much.